Okay, so tonight what we're going to start with our candidates. We are missing 2 candidates. You have it on the list. You have the candidates on the list. We're missing Bullock and Jackson. So we have the remaining candidates with the exception of Bullock and Jackson. And they're in alphabetical order if we go down. So what I'd like the candidates to do to start is to tell us a little bit about your qualifications and why you want to be on the Leon County Commission. And we'll start with Ms. Calhoun. Oh, I'm sorry, I went down that way. Okay, that's fine. Start with Ms. Calhoun.
Okay. Shirley MacLaine said, "Don't believe what anyone says who is drunk, in love, or running for public office." So with that, we're here to build trust. I've lived in District 2 for 45 years because I enjoy living there. I've worked there. We do have some issues that do need to be addressed, but for the most part, the people that live in District 2 are hard-working, honest, decent, good people, and they also choose to live there. I was a small business owner. I've worked several different jobs. The last job that I did work was as a cashier at a convenience store, and you do have to have tenacity to work at a convenience store. I learned that people that walk through the door think that they could cuss you out just by looking at you. And I learned a lot about human behavior, and I was urged to run for this particular office. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just come down the aisle, down the way.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Howard Font. I came here about 5 years ago, like many people in District 2 do, because of Florida State University or FAMU or TCC. And before that, I moved probably 17, 18 times. So I've spent most of my life here in Tallahassee. I was able to grow roots here. It's special to me for that reason. It's the first place that I've ever been able to call a permanent home. And one of my passions, more of a hobby before this, was following politics, all levels, local, state, federal. And I never degraded politics or public service as nasty or a bad thing. I found it noble. It takes a lot to jump into the public arena, and I think that we need people that are representative of the electorate. When it comes to District 2 and Leon County in general, I think that we need new perspectives on the commission. I think that everyone is well-intentioned. I think that everyone wants to lower unemployment, wants less crime, wants more jobs, wants higher paying jobs. But when you're only coming at it with a couple of perspectives, there are problems. So I was also sought after, saw this, that the seat was open, and said, I owe it to my community before I start my career. I think that I am fully qualified based on the service that I've done at FSU, bringing people into the electorate there, and that I will work to serve you all and be the best representative of the people that I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Carol. I'm Manny Joanos, and I have represented you once before in the 1990s. My main motivation for running is to restore the economy in District 2 and to restore jobs. I read over the questions that you asked online, and I think you might be interested in some of the other things that I have done. In the 90s, I supported and helped develop the comprehensive plan. I helped develop the land development regulations that we live by today. I negotiated the city and county water and sewer agreement that's still in effect today. I helped develop stronger stormwater requirements. I helped develop the stormwater utility. I helped develop stronger septic tank requirements to include larger lot sizes. I helped develop the Lake Jackson Action Team, the Lake Jackson Action Plan, and I was the commissioner appointee to the Lake Jackson Action Team. We were responsible for restoring McGinnis Arm. We were also responsible for the Yorktown Pond restoration. I think you'd have to look at my past so that you could predict my future. In the future, I will continue to support the comprehensive plan that we have in place. I will support the land development regulations that we have in place. I will support the increase of central water and sewer systems in the unincorporated area. I will support the protection of the Wakulla Springs water basin. I will support the purchase of Ames Sink and any other the public purchase of Ames Sink and any other significant karst areas. And I will support the efforts to reduce litter. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Very good. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kirk Headley-Perdue, and I thank you, Carol, and all the folks that chose to be here to get informed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a varied background. I have been a school teacher. I'm the president of the Co-Landing Neighborhood Association, which is in District 2. I've lived in Leon County for, I'm telling a secret, 65 years. I love this community, and this is about people. It's about representing and serving people. I'm a former PTO president, both a teacher as well as a school administrator, have family mediation training. I'm not going to go over all of these. They're on the table, and if you'd like to look at what the qualifications and training are, there are many, including being a nominee for Volunteer of the Year. When elected, I think the safety of citizens in their homes, roads, and communities is essential. I will stand strong for District 2 and be a vocal advocate. I have, in fact, been an advocate for 40 years, and I want to continue that tradition full-time. Job creation, training, and retention need coordinated efforts. We need some equality of resource distribution. We need team communication, acknowledgement, and balance. People need to know what's happening before, not after, decisions are made. When elected, I will listen, be active and accessible, and act on the needs of District 2 and the well-being of Leon County. Kirk works for you.
Thank you. Mr. Font. I'm sorry, go ahead. I called Mr. Font. I meant Mr. Lewis.
How you doing? Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I'm TJ Lewis. I am a lifelong resident of Tallahassee. I came here when I was 2 years old. I've been here since 1987. I matriculated through the public school system here. I've lived on every side of town. I've lived in District 2 for about 12 years since deciding to go to FSU for college. I graduated from Lincoln High School, where I served as student body president. In 2003, I graduated. In the same year, I received a Volunteer of the Year award from the Leon County School System. I really enjoy community service. I'm most famous for my work with UrbanTallahassee.com. I'm the founder of the website. Our focus is tracking Tallahassee's growth and development. And we've done this quite successfully since 2008. We're tracking the trends of how our community is growing, which is the primary reason why I decided to run for office. The stats say by the year 2030, more than 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities. District 2 is a very diverse district. It's probably Leon County's most urban and most rural district. It stretches from Apalachicola National Forest all the way out Highway 20, all the way into town. It touches Doak Campbell Stadium, parts near Mission San Luis, very active areas. Our community has very diverse needs, and it's going to take someone who understands the community as a planner, as a lifelong resident, as a strong listener, as a person who has a strong passion to see Tallahassee grow into its greatest potential, to represent this community to its greatest extent. As a city resident and a county resident, it's also a big priority to me to save both city and county residents tax dollars. So that will be a huge priority of mine as county commissioner. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Dobbins-Franklin.
Thank you. I'm Margaret Franklin, running for County Commission, District 2. I'm born and raised here in Tallahassee, have lived in the district for 37 years. I've enjoyed being in this community, and I've seen so many changes over the years. I mean, when I moved out on Mission Road, you know, there were not even sidewalks. You know, they're across the street from me. I wish I would have bought the property. Now there's apartment complexes. You know, you see all of these changes over the years. I think that I'm qualified for this position. I have been volunteering since I was 3 years old. I used to stand out there and give cookies to the needy. You know, I love the person that's not good. When I say the person that's not good, they say the person that's having problems, call Margaret. I'm that kind of person, the underdog. I look at the underdog, trying to build them up to be a better people. I'm a person, I volunteered for the Penny Sales Tax Committee. I was on the Bias Review FCAT Committee trying to, you know, help these children. I was on CHSP Citizens Review Board. Also, I did many volunteering in the elementary schools, public schools. I'm a product of public schools, even though my most attraction is I opened a private school in the garage of my home. Now we have 2 locations. Yeah, you know, moving right along, I just love what I see about Tallahassee. I believe in urban sprawl. I believe in just everything about what happens with the meetings and everything that we see in the community. I want to be protecting our community through education, through the environment, through protecting the neighborhoods, and protecting our health. These are the areas that, you know, really I'm involved in. The fishing, I want the fishing waters to be better. I would like to say I'd like to see more sidewalks. I'd like to see on Highway 20. I'd like to see a bus out there. There's no buses out there on Highway 20. We need that kind of thing. I'd also like to see more street lights. You know, there are a lot of wrecks. Can you imagine what would happen if we didn't have street lights? I want to thank you. Please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we're getting started. Now let's go to the nitty-gritty. I think I would be deficient as a moderator if I didn't ask this question, which I think is asked every campaign. But what more could the city and the county do to work together to solve problems that cross city and county lines? This is important, obviously, across elections. So, Ms. Franklin, do you want to take this one, and we'll go the other way?
Thank you for that question. I think that the city and county should get together and create jobs. They should get together and create jobs that comes both from the city side and city government and county government for students. For example, in the summer times, I know the Department of Education, they have a lot of jobs for students, but also the county and city should get together and set some type of program so the kids are not just running around all during the summer. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you for the question. So where there is an overlap between the city and county, like I told you, I pay taxes to both governments. I live in the city. I'm a big fan of what they call functional consolidation. We've already done this with our planning department. With my work at Urban Tallahassee, if I want to find out about a project that is occurring outside of the city limits, I have to go to a separate growth management department. Both the city and county have their own growth management departments. There's an opportunity for a functional consolidation. And this can be done across the board. We have separate code enforcement offices. We have separate parks and recreation departments. There are ways to save the community money, especially for a person who shares both governments, because sometimes you get hit twice. And as far as them working together to create jobs, I'm absolutely on board with that, because the city has assets that the county benefits from, such as the airport. The airport is a huge amenity for the entire region. And I believe it should not just be the city looking to lower airfares to lure companies into Tallahassee. It should be both the city, the county, and the other stakeholders in the community, FSU, the state of Florida. Everybody with big pockets, deep pockets, should be working together to make sure we create jobs, not just any kind of jobs, not just filling empty old buildings, but quality, smart, high-tech, mag lab type jobs. So as commissioner, I would work very closely with my counterparts at the city to ensure that wherever there's overlap, we look at every opportunity to do some functional consolidations, because it's going to be very important for me as your commissioner to save you as much money as I can. And then I'm going to look for every possible avenue to create high-paying jobs, whether that's working with the city or working with counties around us, because I see this whole region running through Leon County as a very cohesive and cross-functional unit. So that's how I would do it.
Thank you. Ms. Headley-Perdue?
Thank you. My answer to this one is pretty simple. When people communicate and come together, bigger things can happen than any of us can do individually. I feel that way about the City and County Commission as well. There are things that the city is responsible for, and there are things that the county is responsible for, and there's not always parity in the payment of those things. However, the airport is basically city-run, even though it's in District 2, and the county, 75% of our budget comes from taxes and fees. 45% of it goes to the jail. That is by statute. I do think that having input together is important. I think that bigger things can happen when we pool our resources of experience and knowledge. And I look forward to being one of the commissioners that works with the City Commission, both in the IA agency, as we come together, everybody meets there together, as well as on the County Commission for District 2 and for Leon County and the City of Tallahassee. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joanos?
Thank you, Carol. The question implies that there's not good coordination between city and county, and I don't think that's entirely true. I actually think that the city and county do a whole heck of a lot together, and yes, they can be more communicative with each other. They can be more collegial, but we have joint planning, the joint comprehensive planning. We have blueprint. We're going to have the economic vitality department and fire protection. I think that we do a lot together, and the areas in which there might be conflict, that things need to be sorted out, seems to be proliferated. But I've always felt like I can work with anybody, and as a commissioner, I will be collegial, I will be communicative, I will be, do all that I can to work together with the city. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Font?
Well, I think you're right, Manny. I mean, we pretty much do work in tandem with the city all the time. We couldn't operate otherwise, but we can be more efficient about it. For example, the Sheriff's Department, it's got the Priority 1 SWAT team. If there is a need for SWAT in Leon County or in Tallahassee, the Tallahassee Police Department calls them first. They have their own SWAT team, but they're the second one. That's just an example of how we do work together every day. But an example of how we don't work so well is how we funded the Palmer Monroe Teen Center on Jackson Boulevard. They cut the funding. They were matching, the county was matching it $180,000 with the city's $180,000, and we ended the agreement. Within our rights, that's fine. Is that smart, though? Is it smart to just drop $180,000 in funding? Or should we be smarter and communicate more efficiently, talk to city employees, not just the city commission? Because that's a lot of money to lose in 1 year. Maybe we could phase it out if we decided we couldn't afford it. Maybe we could use the time to find new sources of funding. And that happens all the time. I think there are real places where we need to be fiscally responsible, but that doesn't mean we need to punish people that use services.
Thank you. And Ms. Calhoun?
Well, Leon County and the city of Tallahassee has voted down consolidation 4 times. So that tells you that they do not want to consolidate services. So you're not going to save money if you can't get them to do that to begin with. The first thing I would do when the time was correct would be to call a joint meeting so we could all get to know each other, the new people on the city commission and the county commission, and I would bring a chocolate cake with cream cheese icing, which I'm famous for. And that would break the ice, and sit down and talk about the differences and see if we, what needs to be ironed out. We'll just go ahead and do that over some chocolate cake.
Okay, very good. All right, second question, another question that's sort of in the news, and Ms. Calhoun, we'll start with you. Do you support replacing septic tanks by expanding the sewer system in the county? And if so, how would you fund the program?
Well, I just learned from a meeting Tuesday that I went to that the Economic Vitality is going to be in charge of $90 million that's coming from Blueprint 2000. Logically, there's no way that you can replace all the septic tanks in District 2 or Leon County. It'd take 150 years. It'd take $10 million a year. It's not a logical thing, but what we could do is take some of that money, possibly $7 million a year, and start replacing the septic tanks that are faltering and giving grants to the people that are low income that cannot afford to do so, and start phasing that in. There's no way, logically, that you're going to put sewer and water in the whole county in any short amount of time.
Mr. Font.
Well, I think how you would pay for it is definitely the one-time fee. I don't know that that's the best option, though. I think that when you talk about septic tanks, you're talking about a problem for government because that kind of pollution with the nitrogen affects everyone. So it's appropriate that you do some sort of subsidy. Grants are okay to replace these septic tanks, but you also have to, I'm not saying all in 1 year, I'm not saying all at once. We have to require that that kind of pollution stops. It hurts everybody, it hurts the water supply. So the county can help out by, if the residents are okay with the sewer system, fine. I think the more appropriate action would be subsidizing buying new replacement septic tanks that don't leak.
Okay, Mr. Joanos.
Sure. The capital that'll take to just overnight develop a central sewer and water system throughout the county is obviously way beyond our means. But as I said in my opening comments, I am committed to work, every day on trying to deliver central systems to the unincorporated area. There is a mechanism in place to work with the city to help do that. County doesn't have the sewer system, so anything that we can do to foster the development of sewer systems is a positive.
Very good. Ms. Headley-Perdue.
The infrastructure for sewer and water is important. It is important not only for the 200-plus lakes and waterfronts that we have in this community, it's also important for things like safety. In the past year, there were approximately 100 fire hydrants that were allocated to this community. District 2 got one fire hydrant. I've been working at this a while and have been less than quiet in asking of questions like, how come District 2 got one? There's no infrastructure in place, and water pressure would also be a problem. However, we also have to balance our need for infrastructure for both sewer and Wacalla Springs and all the things that are affected by that with the needs of the community. I think the community has a right to have their questions answered and their voices heard. Last night I was in Woodville and I talked to some folks, and they want infrastructure for sewer and water on the main drag, for example, but they don't want to give up their communities in the rural areas because that's why they moved down there. That is the quality of life for those people. So I think it's important that we take all of that into consideration, both the intended and the unintended consequences, as we do the best we possibly can as a team to keep folks together in terms of where we're headed. So I think we have to ask, and then I think we have to be responsible. And it's a full-time position. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Yes, thank you. So I already spoke that District 2 is both the most urban and most rural part of the county. Now, when people choose where they live, they're also choosing a level of services they receive, and they're, in a way, setting their tax rate. I pay 3.7 more mills for my property than someone who just lives in the county. As a result, I have sewer services. Now, the city of Tallahassee just recently spent perhaps had its most expensive public infrastructure project out at Capitol Circle and Spring Hill Road when it rebuilt a wastewater treatment facility at a cost of almost $400 million. Many have heard the horror stories about Wakulla Springs, which you probably can't even see through anymore. It's turning green. We have other lakes in our area, Lake Munson, Lake Bradford, Leon Sinks, that are all vulnerable to the impacts of human behavior because many of us in our district do not have septic tanks. These are upflow from the areas that drain into those very precious lakes that we have in our area. I fully support some measure to get the people who need to be on septic tanks because there are some things in the environment that you just can't put a price tag on. And even though we enjoy a lower cost of living in the rural parts of our community, we still need to protect some treasures that we can't replace with money. So to the extent that we need to get some septic tanks converted to sewer, I do agree that a study needs to be done to figure out a cost, but something needs to be done because we don't want to lose Wakulla Springs. So.
Very good. Ms. Franklin?
Thank you. When talking about replacing the septic tanks, I understand that the problem is the nitrogen that goes into the water. And if you know the history, Tarzan in Wakulla, he filmed, his showdown there. Okay, that's history. And people like Tarzan are not going to come down there if the water is contaminated. We want to bring jobs. Okay, so I would say that to replace those tanks would be very expensive, but we should get scientists in there. I spoke to several scientists the other day. We need to get scientists in there that will study those tanks, those systems. And there's little things can be done for little pills or different things that they can do to try to clean it, okay, to try to do the things that need to be. But of course, the scientists do cost money. But to get money to work out this system, I would look at all the waste that we do in Tallahassee or in the world, all the waste. For example, every 3 to 5 years, you have a company like FEMA. They throw away, many computers after 3 to 5 years. Computers are still good after 3 to 5 years. Use some of those waste areas. Keep it longer than 3 years. Keep it longer than 5 years instead of throwing those things out. I went to pick up $150,000 worth of computers because they said, well, Margaret, if you don't get here, we're going to crush them. So I picked them up and they last me for 5 years. So there's a lot of waste out here. And we need to sit down and look at what we're doing for its waste. And we can use some of that waste to have more money to do something else with. Thank you very much for the question.
Terrific. Thank you. All right, I'm going to start, Mr. Joanos. You mentioned the comprehensive plan. This is a comprehensive plan question, so I'm going to start with you and then let everybody also talk. But here's the question. The goal of the comprehensive plan is to protect and enhance the quality of life in Leon County. What circumstances would, in your opinion, justify amending the comprehensive plan?
Well, I think every 6 months it goes through some sort of amendment process in which, there might be staff members, there might be community members, there might be any number of people that would present proposed amendments, and then the legislative body, being the city and the county commissioners sitting together, would act on either the affirmative or negative on accepting the amendment. I think it's a living, breathing document, and I think it needs to be as populations grow in sway in different areas of the community. And, I think there's a process in place and it makes sense.
Okay. Mr. Font?
I would say I agree. The important thing is that we are listening to constituents. And I think when it comes to the comprehensive plan, we especially listen to business leaders because they know how their business works better than we do. Every business is different. There's no such thing as just saying, well, this guy can do the business part. It's more complicated than that. So let's make sure that we have a special effort to reach out to businesses and say, hey, what difficulties do you have from the governmental perspective? Because we can't run your business for you, but we can make sure you don't have as many hoops to jump through as long as it's safe. The same goes for everybody else. You don't like the way it's running the city, running the county, then come up here and let's talk about it. That's democracy.
Okay. Ms. Calhoun?
The county needs to accommodate families who want to deed their land to their brethren without paying exorbitant fees or permits. If you live on 10 acres, you have to jump through hoops, you have to beg, you have to plead, you have to go in front of the commission to, for a waiver to deed land to your children that you would like them to have. You want them to have a half an acre or an acre. It doesn't work now because of the comprehensive plan, and I think that that needs to be changed.
Let's see. How about Ms. Franklin?
Well, I think when you're dealing with comprehensive planning, there needs to be research first. There should never be anything done without doing proper research. Because if you don't research on the front end, then you suffer on the back end. So, and there's something called proposed amendments to tell whether you're for something or against something. You need to take in consideration of those people that are doing the propositions, what their backgrounds are. Because, you know, no one shoe fits all. So if you have people there that do not have the experience, then you may get not a good outcome because no one shoe fits all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Lewis?
Yes, thank you. So the comprehensive plan represents the community's efforts at long-range planning. And I'm particularly interested in our future land use map, and I pay close attention to our urban services area boundaries. There are times when, one, I want to say, since 2014, I track commercial growth in Leon County. Since 2014, 100% of our commercial growth has occurred in our urban services area, which is something Tallahassee should be commended for. Communities should take pride in being compact and efficient, especially with infrastructure. I think Tallahassee prides itself on being lean and green, and our urban services boundary certainly helps us to accomplish that. With regard to our comprehensive plan, assuming we're not in a amendment cycle, and some developer comes and says, hey, I own a large tract of land out Thomasville Road, and your plan limits what I can do with my property, and I want you to change it. Well, the plan exists for a reason. The idea being that we have to grow in an orderly fashion. So this brings me to an issue that recently came up, concurrency versus a mobility fee. Concurrency was established some time ago. The state of Florida required all cities in the communities in the county, in the state, to charge a developer a concurrency fee. And then 4 years ago, it relaxed that requirement, and now we have this option to switch to a mobility fee, which promises to encourage growth where it should occur and discourage it in the form that it is in right now with the concurrency model that is having the unintended consequence of creating sprawl. So in events where we have a policy on the books that has created an unintended consequence, I would look at amending the comprehensive plan. Otherwise, I'd wait until the cycle comes around.
Good. Ms. Headley-Perdue?
I see the comp plan as a skeleton for growth. And I think that keeping citizens informed and involved is important. And that's part of the mission. Meaningful input into decisions through the intergovernmental agency for the comp plan are also essential. We need balance between smart growth and property rights. The comp plan is about smart growth, and I think that's the intention, but there are individual property rights that also have something to do with this. And I think that there's some parts of the comp plan that could be tweaked. Excuse me, my allergies are running rampant. For example, the rezoning process is way too cumbersome when it comes down, in most cases, when it comes down to promoting our workforce development and new business and that kind of thing. The other thing that I would tweak is the site plan review. When I was reading about the EPA and the water today, and they were talking about it was a setup, that it was already done, my experience with the site plan review is much the same way, which directly ties in to the comp plan and workforce development. And I mean, it is, if you remember, I don't know where I saw this, but it's circles, concentric circles. And the truth is, most everything in the county is interconnected, and we need to look at what those interconnections are and make sure that we're making decisions and policy for the people.
Very good, thank you. I'm getting some questions from the audience, so I want to ask you one, here's the question. It was mentioned by Mr. Lewis that we as a district do not want to lose Wakulla Springs. What, if elected, would each of you do to continue to protect our valuable environmental resources in District 2? So, Mr. Lewis, why don't you start, and then we'll go down the line.
Thank you for the question. I am running on a platform of smart growth. You'll see it on my trailer. It's on all my materials. I'm trying to be your smart growth champion for a reason. I take urban encroachment into the natural, pristine areas very seriously. I am not a big fan of leapfrog development. I'm criticized for that. Some people think I am anti-growth. No, I'm just for orderly, planned, and tasteful growth. I am a commercial realtor, so it benefits me to have growth, and I track growth for a living, so it benefits me to have growth occur in the community. It just needs to occur in the right way. Smart growth gives the community another option. Right now, when we grow, we allow developers to build on cheaper land on the edges of the city. All that does is require taxpayers to fund construction of new fire stations and schools and expanding new roads, putting up new light poles, you name it. You paying for infrastructure to subsidize a developer. Now, we could do all of the things we want to do in terms of growing the right way under the smart growth approach. Smart growth essentially directs growth to infrastructure we've already invested in. So where neighborhoods are crumbling, where schools are falling apart, where we have safety concerns, we're directing our growth. And that new growth brings new money to the community that allows us to not only improve our community and make Tallahassee a more attractive place to live, but with the new growth, the funds in our coffers, we have the money to address our safety concerns, reconstruct our schools, and of course, protect our natural resources. So I think that's a big thing for us, is looking at how we grow, where we grow, and what we do with the money, which will allow us to address our problems.
Okay, let's see. Ms. Franklin, sorry.
Oh, I too, on my platform, I talk about protecting their environment, and that's through the clean drinking water and clean fishing waters. And in the process of doing that, having safety measures set up where we often go to those areas and make sure that the wooded areas are not going all into the waters, making sure everything is clean, testing everything out, keeping research there for the safety. We want to maintain effective drainage and sewer systems, that I think that we need to do more research in this area. I too believe in the smart growth, because I don't want to go out there and, have a sprinkler system out there, and then, the whole neighborhood gets flooded. So it's important to me that we do have smart growth. And in the process of smart growth, we want to look at a variety of people with experiences that will come in with ideas so that we know what we're doing, because everybody has different experiences, and from different experiences you get a different value on the end. So we need to often try to get new people to come in and view everything so that we can have smart growth. Thank you.
Ms. Headley-Perdue.
The environment is important to me. As I told you all, I've been here 65 years. I grew up in the country with lakes and streams and forests, and my dad was a timberman and a farmer. And so I think taking care of our environment is important. I think preserving our resources, our natural resources that are part of the quality of life, particularly for District 2, but all of Leon County. I look at this as an example at the algae situation that is really bad with many of our lakes, Munson, lakes in Calhoun, and I will tell you that I live on Lake Talquin, and just this week, I often in the morning have a little prayer time. Helps me get through the day in the way that I can be proud of. And I looked out this morning and earlier in the week, and there's algae all over in front of my house. This is not good, as one example. That's part of what has created the Wakulla Springs issue. So dealing with and monitoring the environment and looking at it realistically in terms of what's it costing us to not intervene is just plain not common sense. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that is my answer.
Yeah.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Joanos.
May I ask a question before
Sure.
Manny starts? Are we going to take a potty break, or should I just get up and go and catch up when I get back?
Well, sure. Why don't we take a 5-minute break?
I don't mean that tacky. I'm like,
Well, let's go through the questions, and, and then we'll take like a
Okay,
5-minute
perfect.
break.
Thank
5
you.
minutes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Joanos.
Thank you, Carol. In May of this year, this newspaper article showed up in the newspaper. It says, wanted a force to restore Lake Jackson. And I was intrigued by that, and I read through every line of it. What intrigued me was that the gist of the article said if we could only just restore Lake Jackson to the water quality standard that we had in 1993. In 1993, I was chairman of the Leon County Commission, and I was head of the Lake Jackson Action Team, and we had a county commission that was very active in restoring Lake Jackson, and it took a lot of dollars. I'm proud to say that they want to restore the water quality to what we had in 1993, and my colleagues are very proud of that also. What I'll say to you is that for the Wakulla Springs water basin, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and it'll take money. It'll take more public purchase of properties to deliver those important karst areas from private hands to public hands. It will take resolving the septic tank failures that we have in Woodville, and that will take central sewer and central water systems, and in some cases may take just doing whatever you can to restore those areas. They're in low lands, and it'll take a lot of effort. It'll take a lot of attention. I can't begin to tell you what the engineering is. I'm not an engineer, but I know as a leader that you can straighten the ship and move it in the right direction. Thank you.
Mr. Font.
Well, I think people think about this question in an extreme way. You can only have one or the other. You can only, you either have to spend a ton of money to protect the environment, or you are pro-business and let them do what they want, and the environment be damned. That's not the situation at all. If we do nothing, that costs us money. So let's spend a little to protect our home where we live, just like everyone has to protect their own private property, everyone has to clean up their own private property, let's have a community investment in that is appropriate. I think that some of the water testing that the county does is great, but everyone uses these these facilities for recreation, that it's part of our community, it's worth protecting. And, like Manny, I'm definitely not an engineer. I graduated just recently in international affairs. And I just know that it's worth the investment. We can find the people, we can find the solutions, but I don't like seeing a dirty home, and I don't like seeing a dirty District 2 or Leon County.
Thank you. Ms. Calhoun.
Well, this is where the chocolate cake and the $90 million comes in. I would ask the city of Tallahassee for involvement in planning the installation of sewer systems in the older neighborhoods and lowering the connect fees for those on fixed incomes. With that $90 million, which I'm sure we wouldn't get all of it, we could begin to start to fix the septic systems that are failing. Like I said earlier, there's no way that you can install sewer in the entire District 2. It's too rural. It'd take 150 years. But there's a beginning, and we can work on the existing leaking septic tanks. We can help people get newer, upgraded ones with that $90 million. And we can work with the city and see if they'll kick some money in to get a filtering system for all the stormwater runoff, which is 75% of it, runs through Lake Munson.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a brief break, 5 minutes, and then we'll be back. I have lots of other good questions for this group. I have one more questions on the septic tank system from the audience. And so this is a very specific question. So what I'd like to do on this question is, if you would like to answer this question, let me know and you can answer the question, all right? But I'm not going to go up and down on this one. With regard to advanced septic tank systems, the commission has been gun-shy to bring this for a vote since the 2009 public hearing. Would you be bold enough to call for a vote on this? And are you familiar with the compact sewer system? So these are, again, questions about voting for the septic tank, advanced septic tank system in something called a compact sewer system. So I have any volunteers who want to answer this?
I'll jump in. And I guess I'm willing to jump in because I don't know the answer to the question. And I don't know what a compact sewer system is unless it is like an above-ground system. And so somebody that knows more than I would love very much for you to speak with me and get educated about it. Here's my understanding of the sewer system, and particularly for the folks that are closer to Woodville and Wakulla Springs, as I spoke earlier about this. But I think that we need to preserve, obviously, the springs as much as we can, as well as our other waterways, from a health and safety standpoint, as well as the aesthetics of the whole situation. So whoever asked that question, I don't think I get to request, but I do request that you come speak with me after and educate me, because I'm bold enough to ask anything that needs to be asked is the rest of that question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other responses to that question? Okay. Here's another question for the audience, and Mr. Font, I'd like for you to take this first. As a county commissioner, what is your stance on the type of balance, or the balance between spending on projects that will attract young professionals and projects necessary to address the dire poverty issue that affects our district? So how do you strike that balance between bringing in young professionals and dealing with poverty?
Well, they're semi-connected, but for the purpose of the question, I'll treat them separately. I think that the people that are here that have been in the community obviously take precedence. We need to help people that are hurting before we help people that, might be able to help themselves. So I'd skew it more towards making sure that we were doing more for poverty. But I think that when you have the universities, you have plenty of young people already here. We can take some steps, especially with things like FSU investing $100 million into their School of Entrepreneurship, to make sure that they stay here, to make sure that businesses start here. High-tech things at Innovation Park. Let's fill up some of the empty business complexes we have with young people. Let's make them the fuel that drives our economy, that creates more jobs, creates higher paying jobs, and actually one group can help the other, I think.
Okay, so tell me again, how would you balance it then?
So you can work on both at the same time. I'm not,
Okay.
saying you can't, but I would skew it more towards poverty, because that's people that are here in the community already, and the students that you talked about are coming in and they have their own tax bases.
Okay. Others? I have other people who want this to deal with this balance. Yes, Mr. Lewis.
Yes. So as the community grows, we're going to encounter a situation where homes become more expensive. That's just the nature of a more desirable market. In planning, we have this concept called accessibility, where we try to make communities affordable for people of all classes. So there are a variety of different things we can do with zoning, for instance, that will allow housing of a certain size in neighborhoods where it's traditionally not allowed. This will enable young people, whom you said we want to attract, an opportunity to afford a house in Leon County. We can do rounds of redevelopment. There are opportunities for gentrification in certain pockets, especially in District 2, where we can retrofit some homes in some neighborhoods, make them more attractive and more desirable to live in the process improving the school systems in those areas, and also making the homes in the neighborhoods affordable for people to live in. So accessibility is a big issue, because even in our most affluent areas in the community, where they may not be in District 2, but there are jobs in those areas, or maybe stores in those areas, and normally the residents of those areas, the affluent areas, don't work at the stores that cater to them. It's the people who are of lower income that must go to those communities and serve them. So there needs to be a way for those people to get around the community. Transportation is a thing that we can continue to work on. I know we don't have routes to everything just yet with our Star Metro. We can continue to do more things with mobility in terms of getting bike routes or safe bike lanes through the community too. So accessibility will create options, housing options for people, and attract young people to live in Leon County.
Any other? Yes, ma'am.
The way I would balance
question
it
was.
is that poverty usually starts out with non-educated. So I would set up training to balance it. You need training, in the communities where there's much poverty. Training and education, because education takes you from one socioeconomic level to the next. So through training, that will help balance, because those same poor people will also become professionals, because they have the training to get the jobs, the training where they're going to be accessible to people that want to give them jobs, making more money. So we can balance all of this out by training poverty to become educated through either vocational or colleges. Thank you.
Okay. One of the responsibilities of the county commission is public health and health in general. So I have a couple of health questions. Ms. Calhoun, how would you help provide psych services to the diversion programs for persons with mental illness and to avoid jail? So how would you provide psych services in a diversion program for people who have mental illness but are stuck in jail?
Our commissioner now, Bill Proctor, had a meeting earlier in the summer about that, trying to get that issue discussed, and there has not been any monies put forward for that at this particular time. But Yeah, I used to be an office manager for a psychiatrist. And, you know, sometimes you can look at somebody and you don't know that they, just by looking at them, that they have a mental illness. You don't know if they're bipolar or schizophrenic or borderline. You don't know if they have a closed head injury. And some people act out their behaviors and they do have to be medicated. Well, law enforcement, when they arrest somebody for committing a crime, they don't know that either. But when they get to jail and they exhibit those behaviors, they have to be medicated. I'm not sure, and I haven't looked into it to see if there's a psychiatrist or a psychologist on duty with the Leon County Jail, but I do believe that funds do need to be put into the community through the Bond Community Center, through all the ones that we do have in Leon County, and to address the mental health issue, yes.
Others?
The diversion program that currently exists for offenders, I think, is really good. It works through the state attorney's office, it works through the law enforcement, as well as through Nancy Daniels' office. All that's good, and it's at the discretion of primarily law enforcement, and there's some back doors that people can get in. The problem is, and I am a mental health professional, and have a master's in social work and have been a clinical therapist. The problem is when you create the diversion programs and somebody does notice additional training is necessary in a lot of cases, but somebody does notice that you've got pathology or addiction or, you know, a DMS-5 label, where do you get treatment? That's the issue as I see it. I think the diversion program is good, and I think folks recognizing that we have addiction pathology and mental health issues is wonderful, but we got to focus on that. We got to focus on treatment at some point. Thank you.
Ms. Franklin? You were going to answer, you wanted to answer that too.
Yes, mental health is very dear to me. I had a niece that was 4 years old that was raped by grandma's boyfriend. And she only got 30 days of psychiatric treatment. You know, she was poor, living in the projects. Now she's a 45-year-old woman in Chattahoochee, you know? So we have to do more to protect those kids. She should have had therapy all her life, with money or without money, but there was no funding there. So we need to do something because there's a fine line between sanity and insanity. We're having a lot of killings and a lot of unsafe situations in schools because of people having emotional development problems, and there's no money there. You can have Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Blue Cross Blue Shield will only pay about $400 a year for mental health. That's crazy, you know, and there's not a lot available here in Tallahassee, and we need to fight for more monies into those areas.
Thank you. And Ms. Franklin, another health question. We have heard complaints about services provided by the clinics funded through the county's primary health care program. What actions would you support to address the customer satisfaction of patients who must access these services because they are uninsured?
What I'd first do is I'd hope as a commissioner to try to bring in more grants to help, you know, fund these type clinics. That's one of on my platform. I'm wanting more clinics in the area, more monies bundled into these programs so that everybody can take advantage of. It shouldn't be a thing of a single mother, you know, able to get the benefits, and then the single father doesn't get the benefits because he doesn't have any children. You know, they always set this thing up where if you're a single parent with children, you can get the benefits. But if you're a single person without children, you can't get anything. So it's crazy. So you can be single with no children and you cannot get that benefit, or you can be 50 years old with no children, all kids gone, and you cannot get anything. So, you know, it should be more of a leveling playing thing where all people, whether they're old, whether they're young, whether they have children, whether they're without children, whether they're a male or whether they're a female, everybody should have the same chance. And what I would do is try to get funding in there for each situation, individual situation, because there's several situations, not just a mother with children. Thank you.
Others? Okay.
No, I want to address that, I think. I have a gal that works for me, and her husband is in her 40s. And he just had open heart surgery, all of which was paid for, as well as the follow-up care, by the clinics. And I think it's wonderful that folks have that opportunity. And the complaint that they have at this point is not about service or the level of service, it's the waiting times. And so having that available for folks may mean more waiting than they're comfortable with because they can't predict when appointments will come or who will walk in. So I just wanted to share that it is available for other than single moms. This is a single guy, and he has been, I think, incredibly lucky. If I had to have open heart surgery, I think it would cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. My child actually was born needing open heart surgery, and it did before it was over cost $1.5 million.
Others? Okay, Mr. Lewis, what actions do you think the county commission should take to address gun violence in Leon County?
Well, there are some common sense things we could do. I wrote that we should look at where we are having the highest incidence of gun violence, where people are being arrested for that, where calls are coming in. We should look at our statistics and develop a intellectual database to help us do some preventative crime stopping. Normally this means putting our law enforcement patrols in those areas where the occurrence of gun violence are highest, so that the neighborhood sees the patrols and the perpetrators see the patrols, and they're less likely to commit those crimes because there is a deterrent right across the street. There is a way to somewhat predict where these things would occur just based on where the perpetrators live, where the incidents have occurred over time. We have the data, we just have to collect it and begin to use it for this purpose. Another thing I would do is within our high crime areas, I would look at opportunities to establish I want to call it a neighborhood community center, more for intervention and prevention of crime. Neighborhood children and families could come to a resource officer that's stationed in the neighborhood, and without, say, the child getting in trouble or the perpetrator getting in trouble, have some sort of an opportunity to engage with an officer and be mitigated with, or conflict mediation could occur there, and no one has to go to jail and no one has to have a record, because once they have a record from a young age, it's hard to turn their life around. So I would look at those type of things. Normally just target our resources where we know the crime is most likely to occur. Thank you.
Welcome. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Headley-Perdue.
I got to jump in on this one. Crime, guns, poverty, lack of jobs, affordable housing, economic segregation in District 2 are directly related. I had the privilege to be part of the board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club of the Big Bend. And I don't know if y'all know where Laura Lee Avenue is, but it's close to the fairgrounds, okay? And that's where the Boys and Girls Club was. And Florida Tax Watch did a study, and kids were picked up within a 1-mile radius of the Laura Lee Boys and Girls Club center. There were 500 plus children picked up. I think it was in a month or 2 months cycle. It was not a lot of time. The youth that were a part of the Boys and Girls Club, the number that were picked up was 0. 0. And that was their neighborhood. We need to use some common sense prevention to help mitigate our growing crime problem. Prevention is way cheaper than treatment and always will be. So not only do we have to focus on making the consequences, I didn't see, 20, 30, making the consequences not worth the insult or God forbid, the death that guns can cause. But we have to use common sense to utilize the programs we have that have now partnered with schools. I'll say more about that if I get a chance, I hope.
Others,
I'd
gun
like to
violence?
say
Yes,
something.
ma'am, Ms. Calhoun.
As I told you earlier, I worked at a convenience store as a cashier. One day I had 3 little boys come in between the ages of 8 and 10. They had bandanas across their face, and they were pretending like they had guns, and they were shooting at me. I didn't think it was funny. I called the sheriff's department. One of our resident sheriffs, Darren Wood, came out, picked them up, took them home, scolded their parents. The one parent was in the front room drunk and drinking and entertaining someone. So here you had 3 children, the ages between 8 and 10, running the street, acting like little thugs, and the parent was at home not paying attention to their child. This is broad daylight. He said if he ever picked up the children again, he couldn't arrest the children, but he wasn't going to arrest the children, he was going to arrest the parent. It comes from the parent. It comes from the churches. We can't expect the county commission, we can't expect the Leon County Sheriff's Department, we can't expect the school to raise our children. Our beliefs, our standards, our morals come from the children. The parents need to take a stand. The parents need to get involved. And the parents need to know to lock their guns up, to not be accessible to children, and to start paying attention and parenting their children like they should.
Others? No, going. Okay, I think this is the last question, but, who is it going to, Ms. Joanos. What is your position on placing impact fees on new construction to cover the increased burdens? We've been talking a lot about this on schools, libraries, roads, sewers, waters, and other services. All these things we've been talking about cost money. Are we going to pay for it through impact fees?
Thank you, Carol. Let me talk a little bit about what District 2 looks like. We have 3 major zip codes in District 2, 32310, 32304, 32305. The poverty levels in our district have grown to extraordinary heights. According to the Distressed Communities Index, which is based on the U.S. Census, 32310 ranks 97.4. That's in the worst 5%. 32304 ranks 96.4 in the worst 5%. 32305 is 81.7%, which is ranked in the top 20 worst areas. We may have one of the worst districts that is ranked economically in the state. I support business expansion. I support small business expansion. We have extraordinary business closures in District 2, extraordinary unemployment. I support recruiting to repurpose the big box employment centers that have closed, like Tax World, Department of Revenue, the Big Harveys. I support to recruit investment to redevelop areas that are so run down that all you can do is redevelop the area. I do not support increasing development fees. I actually support reducing development fees so that District 2 can recruit investment to the area and rebuild that community that is in dire need of support. Thank you.
Others? Yep. Mr. Lois.
All right, Mr. Joanos talked about the distressed index being an issue in our district. As far as the impact fees are concerned, impact fees are imposed to require a developer who builds things in our community to pay for their impact to our community. So that development, whether it impacts our schools, our fire stations, adds service to our roads, makes us responsible for sewer lines, et cetera, that developer is paying that fee. So on one hand, we're complaining about being the most distressed part of Leon County. And on the other hand, we're saying to the developer, we don't want you to pay as much. Well, who's going to pay it? The distressed people? I think it's on the developer to pay that. Now, how the developers pay is another question. Right now, we impose impact fees through concurrency. Concurrency means that when a development occurs, based on your level of impact to the community's infrastructure, you pay a fee. That fee can be very high depending on whether or not your impact to our resources is high. What developers end up doing is building in the most sparsely populated areas of our community, normally creating sprawl to have a cheaper project. And right now we have an option to go with a mobility fee that reverses that. So where there is a higher concentration of a population or more activity centers, developers will have to pay less or have an opportunity to pay less to build there, which will encourage redevelopment of our, calling it distressed district. So I want to see the distressed district improve. And the way to improve it is not by repurposing big box stores or reducing fees on developers. The way to improve that is to adjust the fee structure that we impose. So that's how I would fix the problem.
Great. Others?
We got it.
This is a spider web that's just all connected. People started leaving our district 20 to 25 years ago because of the school systems. Our schools are rated D except for the exception of Fort Braden, which is a C. Families are not going to want even to come and build and buy a house, a fixer-upper, and have children and send them to D-rated schools. I love living in District 40, in District 2. Like I said, I've been here 45 years. There's some things that we do need to change, but you know, when you make promises to build 300 brand new homes and bring in 50 new businesses, it's almost like Rick Scott when he said he was going to bring 750,000 jobs to Florida, and maybe District 2 got a half of one.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I just have to do a correction. I was in Woodville last night with the folks and the students and the fine principal, and that is an A school in our district, the Woodville Elementary School. And we have a fine school in Fort Braden that's a C. And I think we got to make it attractive for businesses to locate, relocate, whatever. Some of the things that Mr. Joanos was talking about, like the Department of Revenue, is already repurposed. It's in the middle of being redeveloped, and it's a big complex. And I think that's wonderful. And the only reason that that happens is because somebody saw potential, not only for a need, but I don't know many businesses that don't want to make some money. So it has to make economic sense. And I think the impact fees need to be adjusted. Of course, I think that the stormwater fees and the fire fees should be adjusted. Just as an example, if you live in a $5,000 mobile home, you ought not to be paying the same thing that a $5 million homeowner is paying somewhere else. But that would get complicated. And I digress, and I apologize. So I do not think that we have enough information. I don't agree with the $300,000 that we're spending on a study between the impact and mobility fee, but I don't think it would be prudent at this point to make a decision without that information since it's en route. Thank you.
Thank you. Our time is up. I'm being pushed off the microphone here. Our time is up. I want to thank all our participants who are in the arena for their candid and wonderful answers to the questions. So thank you very much.
Y'all for having us. Thank you.